Charges filed in a horrific Moorhead, Minnesota crime. Richard Leroy Basswood III of Moorhead is facing a charge of murder of an unborn child, along with domestic assault, and threats of violence. According to the criminal complaint, this is what happened with the names of officers and the female victim omitted. Quote, on March 15th at approximately 4:44 p.m., Moorhead officers dispatched to 1016 18th Street South regarding an unknown disturbance. Dispatch advised a call had come in and a woman was heard crying while a male voice was in the background. While an officer was the first to arrive and eventually made entry to the building, the officer could hear a woman screaming from an apartment and knocked on the door, but no one answered. Officers arrived and it was determined that entry would be made into the apartment as a woman was screaming and no one was answering the door. The officer noted the door was unlocked and they opened the door within the apartment. An officer observed blood on the couch and she announced her presence as a police officer. A male wearing a black shirt, later identified as Richard Basswood III, was seen in the coming around the corner. When the defendant saw the officers, he ducked back in the hallway and got out of sight. Despite multiple commands to come out and show his hands, the defendant remained hidden. Officers heard the woman continue to scream, therefore entered with tasers and firearms drawn. The defendant was around the corner in the hallway near the bathroom. Officers located the defendant and he then complied with the commands to get on the ground. As officers gained control of the defendant, another officer went to the female lying in the bathroom. The female, later identified, was covered in blood and actively bleeding from her face, nose, and mouth. The victim was gasping for air and indicated she was unable to breathe. The victim slumped and appeared to stop breathing. The officers shook the victim until the victim seemed to wake up and started coughing and spitting up dark clots of blood. The victim was crying and repeatedly saying, "I'm so scared, I'm so scared." The officer remained with the victim until paramedics arrived to administer care. While speaking with the paramedics, the victim advised she was 16 weeks pregnant and asked for the officer to retrieve a bag of her things, including prenatal medications. The victim was transported to a local hospital for treatment. After the victim completed her preliminary medical evaluation, she spoke with an officer and began to state, quote, "He's going to get me, where is he?" After being reassured the defendant was in custody, the victim provided a statement stating that the defendant had been drinking and was supposed to move out of the apartment. The victim stated the defendant got angry with her when she told him the landlord was at the building. The victim stated the defendant growled at her and started saying this was her fault. The defendant then started punching her repeatedly in the head with both hands. The victim said that the defendant continued to yell at her while he strangled her to the point where she couldn't breathe. The victim further stated she was trying to block the blows to her head with her right arm and she thought she was going to break her arm as he struck it. The victim said she was curled up and trying to protect her stomach area, and the defendant told her she was not going to walk out of this alive. The victim stated she kept telling the defendant that she loved him and that she couldn't breathe when he was strangling her. The next day, at approximately 2:37 p.m., an officer contacted the victim by phone and she stated she was still in the hospital and hoped to leave soon. The victim stated she had a broken nose, broken cheekbone, and swollen eye. The officer then asked how the condition of the unborn child. The victim stated the nurses were unable to get a heartbeat and she had lost the child. The victim then started to cry and the phone call was ended. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNewZ.TV.